So today we're going to be talking about setting up Google Ads and how law firms can take advantage of this if their jurisdiction allows. So we've invited Ethan and Kaushik on the call today to sort of walk us through. At the very beginning, when you're thinking about Google Ads, this seems very complicated, right? Just the thought of a lawyer or a business development manager setting this up seems very complicated, and they're just going to export this out to some consultants to do it for them. Tell us why this is not so complicated.
I think because of when you do go into Google Ads for the first time, there are so many options, and it can seem very overwhelming, like you said. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that once you actually get into it, once you do it once or twice, it is really not as complex as it seems. And I think these days, especially, it's a lot more straightforward than it has been in the past. So I think that it's definitely something that, while it may take a few hours to learn, it's well worth putting a bit of time in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to ask, well, how much is it going to cost, right? How much? But I think with Google, you can sort of set your maximum. Can you explain how the pricing works on Google Ads, a sort of pay per click model?
Okay, so this is probably the most complex part of Google Ads after I just said it wasn't complex. But Google Ads, unlike most other ad networks, Facebook or whatever, it uses bidding. So basically, that means that the highest bidder will get the ad slot. So if a user comes along and searches for a personal injury lawyer in Melbourne, then all of the personal injury lawyers in Melbourne who are using Google Ads will bid to try to get that top ad slot for the user to see. So that is to say that the price can range a lot, depending on how competitive it is, how many people are trying to target that ad, that search. But you definitely do have some control over the price, and you can start getting clicks for as little as a few dollars. But at times it could go up to $50, $60 for a single click.
Right, so it's dependent on the words that you're using, the ad words, right? Or the keywords. But can't you set sort of like a maximum daily threshold? So you say, okay, I want to spend no more than $10 per day on this, and if it doesn't go over that, then that's fine. That just carries over, or if it reaches that $10, then it just stops showing your ad. Is that how it works?
Yes. So like I said, it's bidding, right? And you can set a maximum price to pay for a click. However, that's great in some situations, but it also means that if you are trying to target something very competitive and there's many other law firms targeting the same thing, then if the bid goes over your limit, you won't get it. So at
So
times,
that just means it won't be shown, right?
yes. So you won't be charged and it won't be shown.
And again, this is just pay per click. So once someone clicks on it, that still doesn't mean any revenue for your firm, right? So you need to direct them somewhere to go, a landing page or something like that, right? So Kaushik, you're our landing page expert. After we set up the Google ad, where should we be directing them to? Just the home page, or what would be your advice?
Oh boy. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. So, what most law firms do when they run ads is they're like, all right, I've heard you should run ads from other lawyers. Say they run an ad and they send them to their website. And if you look at their website, it looks like a billboard made from 2002, or it's not optimized. That's the nice way of putting it. So, that's what I call leaks. So, there are multiple things happening on the website that the user gets distracted. So they're like, hey, look, I have a blog here. Come check out my blog. Look at these awards and testimonials I got. So there's like so many things going on that the user ends up leaving the website. So if you are running ads for a particular practice area, so you need to have a practice area landing page. Basically, that page only talks about that particular practice area and everything related to that. So you may have the question saying that, hey, look, I have a particular page on my website which directs it to the practice area page. But that is a bit different because once again, there's so many things going on in the website that people get distracted and end up clicking other things because that's what I end up doing as well. So I think if you have like one page where that's all the information they can get regarding that without any distractions, I think it'll be way more optimal and you'll actually get a ROI for the money you spend on ads.
So we shouldn't be doing just an ad just for the firm as a whole, but even niche down into certain practice areas, or like, for example, foreign direct investment into Vietnam, you
Oh,
know,
yeah, definitely.
like,
So
yeah.
we had so we work with the law firm and they wanted to run for like a workers union in a particular zip code. So you have to get hyper specific. So you can target, like the workers union specific zip code and direct them to a landing page so that, so when the person clicking it comes to that page knows, okay, this ad is just for me and it answers my needs. So there's a chance that I might contact them.
Okay. All right. So the Google Ads is just step one, right? Just getting your firm in front of the eye. So let's see how we can do that. So perhaps, Ethan, if you can sort of walk us through how we would do this. I assume everyone would have sort of a Google account, but let's start from that basis here.
Okay, cool. So you can see my screen, right?
And sorry, before we start, so everyone on the call, feel free to jump in and ask questions as Ethan is going through this. This is just a training session here. So, all right, go ahead, Ethan.
Okay, cool. So just to begin with, the website that I'm using at the moment is just ads.google.com. And you can find this just by searching Google Ads. There's a lot of confusion because in the past, this was called Google AdWords, but actually they rebranded it just to Google Ads. So if you hear about AdWords, Google Ads, it is all the same thing.
And you can also find this through Google My Business, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right. So you go to the Google Ads homepage here. Then you sign in with your Gmail account, right?
Yes. You may have a few steps to set up the account. It's been a few years since I've set it up, but that should all be pretty straightforward. And eventually you should be able to access the main dashboard here. And you can just click on the Google Ads in the top left to go to the overview page. And this is where you will see any results for ad campaigns we currently have running. And it's also where you can access like your different audiences, your different saved campaigns, even landing pages. So basically, this is where you will be doing everything.
Okay.
And you can just go to create new campaign. And this here brings you to the actual ad creation stage. One thing that a lot of people may not think about is that Google Ads isn't just the ads you see when you search something, right? Where we all know those ads that pop up when you search something. You know, there's like 2 links at the top of the Google search results, and they'll say ads next to them. And those are Google ads. Those are search ads. But Google actually has a massive variety of other ads because if there's a website, you visit any website, a news website, there will often be ads on them. And those ads are served by ad networks, and often those are Google. So actually, through Google Ads, you can also buy those ad slots on other websites. And I think a lot of people forget about that. Google Ads is much bigger than just the search ads.
Okay.
You can also buy listings on Google Maps. You can put ads in apps. But today, I just wanted to go over search ads because I think they are probably the most valuable type of ad.
So 1 second. So scroll up a little bit. So we have the sales, leads, and web traffic. What's the difference between leads and web traffic? I mean, aren't these paid to click, so they just direct them to their website, or how's that work?
So actually, not all Google ads are pay per click. You can, but you can also choose other metrics, pay per acquisition and pay per impressions, I think are the three main ones. And obviously for a law firm, you don't want to be spending money unless you're getting customers, clients. You want to be paying for probably leads.
Okay.
And this means that you can actually track an action on your website. So when you're running ads for website traffic, then you are paying for clicks, right? Somebody clicks the link, they go to your website, and then you get traffic. You get visitors to your website. But for a law firm, that's probably not particularly useful because customers are generally much higher value, right? Somebody who comes to you is likely to be of a much higher value than somebody who is, let's say, being directed to Amazon or another site like that. So for law firms, it's definitely recommended to go with leads. And this means that you will only be paying for acquisitions that you actually get.
So we did a search, right?
Yes, and then you can select ways you'd like to reach your goal. So basically, do you want people to be calling you? Do you want them to be visiting your website? But this down the bottom here is the important part. So Google needs to actually be able to track things on your website, right? If you're trying to get a conversion, then Google needs a way to actually track that to make sure when somebody comes to your website, they've then used this contact form to contact you. And by default, they can't track those things. So there is a tracking code, and this is a bit technical, but basically you can put this on your website. And I'll actually be discussing this more with the tag manager call in the future.
So if you have like a technical person, like a IT guy and part of your BD team, just reach out to them. They know it at the back of their hand. So yeah, they'll be able to help you with this.
Okay, cool. And then
right. So yeah, once the code is on your website, then they can, or Google can actually track what's happening, and you can set a goal. So maybe the goal is you want somebody to contact you through a contact form, or you want somebody to call your phone number, what have you. So once you've gone through and set up the basic payment method and what type of ads you actually want to run, in this case, again, just search ads, you come to the main ad creation screen. And from here, you can set the name. I just recommend something basic that lets you easily identify.
Oh, that's it won't be shown to the audience. That's just for internal purposes.
This is like real estate ad 2, you know,
right.
something.
It's like ad number 1, ad number 2. It's just to track it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you run a lot of ads, it's very, very easy to get mixed up and to just lose information because you can't remember what ads are what. So down here for the search network, generally I would untick both of these. So Google search partners are basically other Google sites. And again, this is like displaying the ads not only in search, but also on other websites. And the same thing goes for display network. It's basically just their way of saying these ads will be showing all over.
Okay. So like when you go to like a news website, they like auto-populate with certain ads that are based on your location. So that's where those are coming from.
Yes.
So why should we untick those? Wouldn't it make more sense to tick them?
So
or the traffic's not going to be as...
It gives you warnings not to do it. And most ad platforms will do this. So basically, if you do tick these boxes, you are guaranteed to get more impressions, right? Your ads will be shown in more places, more people will see them. However, there's a lot less targeting that you can do on these ads compared to just the straight up search ads. And that's why I tend to not use them, or you can get more views, more impressions, you're probably going to be paying or wasting money.
So if your goal is sort of brand awareness, getting your logo or whatever you happen to want to share in front of most people's eyes, then that's fine. But right, if you want someone to click over to your website and book a meeting, uh, those people probably aren't going to be doing that, right?
Definitely, yes.
I think, sorry to interrupt. I think, let's say you're venturing into a new practice area. You may think, all right, I have to let more people know about this because that's where impressions matter. But I think you have to run a separate ad campaign targeting impressions rather than someone being, let's say, on a news website. And when they're scrolling to something and being like, oh, my law firm is going into a new practice area. I think that's more targeted.
Okay, cool. And then?
There's also a few more settings here. Start and end dates. This is actually a hidden setting. I think they want you to accidentally not cancel your campaigns, but you can set a start date and an end date for campaigns. And the other options I would not worry about, like dynamic search ads, basically allows Google to look at your website and generate ads based on content on your website. And usually you don't want to do this just because having full control is better. I feel like it allows you to identify exactly what works, what doesn't, rather than relying on, I guess, what is an AI to do these things. Okay. And you can also set when the ads run. Usually I wouldn't do this because I think all day generally works fine. But you can, if you have identified a specific time of the day when people might want specific services somehow, then you could use this setting as well. That brings us to targeting and audiences, which is probably the most important part of Google Ads. And it basically just allows you to set a location. The locations can be very specific. I think the smallest you can go down to is zip code. So you can actually set specific zip codes in which the ads will be shown. You generally can't select like suburbs, but you can select cities. And I guess zip code is probably more accurate than suburb anyway. So if you are operating maybe just one branch, then you want to be like hyper specific, right? You only want clients in your local area, maybe in your city or within an hour or two of you. If you have multiple branches, then you might want to consider running different ads for each area. It really just depends on the size of your firm and where you operate.
Okay.
You put in multiple locations. So say if you have a law firm in Los Angeles and San Francisco, but you don't want to do all of California because that's incorporating a lot more people because California is it's such a high population. Can you do that, or do you have to actually just restart with a new campaign? So you'd have like a LA campaign and then a San Francisco campaign.
You could, but usually I think having the separate ad campaigns, while it is more difficult, it's definitely better because you can target them more specifically. So yeah, ideally, I think having separate ad campaigns for each location is the best choice. And yeah, down below you can set whether the people are actually living in that location or whether they're interested in it. So I guess maybe if they have family there, they often visit, so they often search things on Google, then they can identify that, oh, this person has an interest in this area. But for a law firm, you probably just want people actually living in that area.
So this just highlights how creepy Google can be, right? So if you're like a business in Germany who wants to invest in Southeast Asia, your browser is probably full of like, interest, them Googling about Vietnam and Cambodia and, all of that, right? So they'll be able to pick up on that. And even though it's targeted for, let's say, Southeast Asian countries, that person living in Germany will still get the ad?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. When you're on Facebook and you run a campaign and let's say you run a campaign in the US, but you have like a bunch of people from like Pakistan, Bangladesh, India liking it. It's
Yeah.
probably because you ticked the interest box and they probably are interested in Los Angeles and you're like, oh, let me show it to them as well. So I think that's a huge mistake and a waste of money.
So if you're like a personal injury law firm, you certainly do, you want to do them living in that area, right? So you
Mhm.
really target your audience. Okay, that's good
Yeah,
to know.
so you don't have to change any of these. I mean, presence or interest, you probably don't want interest. So set it just to presence. And that will just show it to people who are either living in that location all the time or who are very regularly there. You know, maybe somebody who travels a lot, travels 2 months for work, and then they come back home for 2 months. That will show it to people like that as well. Language is pretty straightforward. I don't think I need to explain that one. Just if you're running ads in different languages, again, I would recommend running different ad campaigns. If you have, if you have English ads and also, I don't know, Korean ads, then it's worth just fully separating those and having different campaigns. It will be much better results in the long run.
Okay.
Now, audiences is the big one here. So this again shows a little bit how creepy Google is, how much data they get. But through here, you can actually go through and you can select interests that people have. So I don't know, maybe, I think for a law firm, it's a bit hard because it's probably not an interest, right? But it's a need. So in that case, it might be a bit different. But if you do have like an ideal customer, a target audience, and you have identified some kind of trait or aspect about them, maybe they like traveling, what have you, you can select that here. And this will just show the people who have shown this interest the ad. So if somebody's regularly, searching for flight tickets or hotels, then it knows that they like traveling and it will show it to those kind of people.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't think it's too important for law firms because, like I said, people don't have an interest in law firms per se, right? They have a need at a time. So it's probably not worth doing interests in that case. But again, if you have an ideal customer or some kind of target audience in mind, then it can be worth it. Just one more thing about that as well is, as with all ads, if you become too specific, they tend to drop off in how well they work because the audience is too niche. So try not to set too many interests and try to make it not too broad and not too niche, because too broad, you'll be wasting money, and too niche, you won't be getting anybody seeing the ad. Budget is just the daily budget. So this is the maximum amount. This much may not be spent every given day, but that is the upper limit that will be spent. And again, if you want to just run an ad for a week, like $100 a day, at the top up here, you can set the start and end date. So if you have a week-long ad with $100 per day, it won't go above $700 for the whole campaign.
And of course, the higher you put that in there, the more people will have the opportunity to click, right?
Yes. Bidding is, like I mentioned previously, Google Ads are all based on bidding, and this is probably what differentiates them the most from ad networks like Facebook, where you are not bidding, you're just paying like a flat rate. So on Google, you will be bidding, you will be competing against others, and you can set a daily budget and you will spend within that amount. However, at times, the bid cost can change drastically. So say, for example, on Monday, you create an ad and the bidding price for that ad is only $10. However, on Tuesday, another local law firm starts running Google ads as well, then your costs could go up to $20, $30, $40 per click. So you can set a cost like per action, which in this case is per lead, per acquisition. But if you've already set a daily budget, I tend to not worry about the cost per action because, again, things can change very quickly. And if you do set your I guess, price limitation as $10 on the first day, and then the next day another competitor enters, your ads will essentially stop running. You'll stop spending money, but the ads will also stop running.
Right.
So yeah, daily budget, I think, tends to be better just because you're not actually specifically defining how much each action costs. You're just defining how much the maximum amount that you're willing to pay per day.
What are some recent examples that you've seen of maybe law firms getting more active in the bidding going up? Because you mentioned the more law firms that start running ads, the bidding, the increase in price obviously is an effect. Besides maybe a law firm taking a new initiative, what other factors are there? Did this kind of off the hip example? Did COVID, because more digitization happened, did that just drive up the cost like double overnight, or just what have you been seeing on your end?
I think for like bigger cities, areas with a larger number of law firms, I think that the prices don't change that drastically because they already have kind of, let's say, like a consistent market. Whereas in like smaller areas where maybe it's a city with just a few law firms, just having one new law firm opening there can change the costs massively. So I think, like you said, COVID could affect it for certain types of lawyers. There are other like events that could change the cost, but generally in areas where there are more lawyers already, more firms, you won't really see drastic changes in the prices, the bidding cost. I think it's more a case for smaller areas where maybe there aren't many people active on Google Ads, and then suddenly more people get involved.
To give you an example, so I know a personal injury. So I think he's Jordan. So he is in Chicago, and he works in a PI firm. And I think like the cost per ad, it can be anywhere from like $70 to like $450. And because Chicago is extremely competitive, and because of COVID, it really hasn't changed much. But I spoke to a friend of mine in Georgia, in Alpharetta, which is like a suburbs. And there the cost went from like 20, $30 to like 70, $80. It kind of like went berserk. So I think in tier 2 cities and like suburbs, the price went up significantly. But like tier 1 cities, since it was always high, so there wasn't much of a change.
And that's $80 per click?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you can change it to per action, which is like you can only pay if someone fills out a contact form. I think that's something we'll talk about in our Google Tag Manager session. But I think like if you pay per click, it's absolutely insane.
Wow. Okay, let's keep going with this.
Yeah, I think just to add to that quickly, insurance and law, I guess often they're somewhat similar, are insanely expensive for ads. By far the most expensive, like average pay per click out of any industry. Okay, so the end of this page, you have ad extensions, and these are site link extensions, pull out extensions, and pull. And I have an image here just to show. So these extensions are basically just like little extra clickable links that show up on the ad. Often you will see ads with lots of these, maybe like 10, and they could be like this, or they could show up as like subcategories, like in this case here.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
So basically, it's just adding extra clickable links to your ad. So again, I would recommend running different ads for every different category, every different practice area you're trying to target. But in some cases, maybe you want to show different practice areas on your ad so that the user can click directly into that practice area rather than going
And
to your homepage and then navigating
and
themselves.
do you pay more for that?
No, you do
Oh,
not.
okay.
However, yeah, if you add too many, then it also it becomes like the homepage landing page issue. There's too much to click, and users may end up clicking on the wrong thing and not actually converting. So generally, it's worth having less of them, or just adding like a phone number might be useful rather than adding lots of different links.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you have actually created, or once you have actually like specified the audience for your ad and you've set up the basics, then you come to the targeting. And the targeting, I think, is probably the next area where a lot of people feel overwhelmed. But actually, it's really not that bad, I think, once you get used to it. I think it's one of the things where when you do it the first time, it can seem overwhelming. But once you do it 2 or 3 times, it begins to become like a second nature. So the keywords are basically just what people are searching to see your ads. So Google ads are based on user intent. If I search, personal injury lawyer in Melbourne, and I get all of the results, I also get ads. And those ads are specifically tailored to what I searched. So Melbourne and personal injury and lawyer, right? They're tailored to some of those keywords, or maybe a combination of all of them. So the keywords are basically just when you want to show up for what people are searching. So when do you want your ads to actually show to a user? And you can use Google Keyword Planner for this. That's a whole nother topic. But you can use Keyword Planner to like see how much the average cost for each type of keyword, the average search volume, things like that. So you can enter a lot of keywords. You probably want to be between like 5 to 10 for a single ad. If you have a more broad ad, then, or if you have an ad where you're trying to just advertise your law firm rather than a specific practice area, you might want to go for more keywords. However, generally, like 5 to 10 is a good number. It's not too broad and not too niche.
Ethan, can you quickly show like what the cost per click for a specific keyword is like? I just want like the listeners to have a feel of what the cost can be and like what to expect.
Okay, so this is Google Keyword Planner, and again, using the Melbourne lawyer example, you can actually search here keywords, in which case I search law, Melbourne legal, and then I set the area as Melbourne, Victoria. I guess I forgot to deselect South Korea, but it doesn't matter. And you can see here the top of page bid, the lower range for these bids, and the higher range. So in this case, targeting a keyword like Melbourne law would be about $2 to $4 US. So these are actually pretty cheap. Often law ads will be $50, $60, $200, depending on the competition and area.
So if you're a BD manager, so if you're a BD manager going to start doing an ad for your law firm, you might want to go in here first and explore, come up with a few different keywords, long tail. Can you do long tail keywords like phrases, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay, and then sort of get a sense of the pricing, right?
Yes, definitely.
If you look at the left, you have like average monthly searches. So if you, let's say, put in a long tail keyword, which is basically a longer, it's basically a sentence instead of like few words.
Yeah.
So your searches will be lower, but it's more likely that it's targeted, and the pricing might be lower as well. So I think it's a matter of like playing around with what works and what doesn't. There's a lot of experimentation that has to go in to realize, okay, these words are good for my firm, these words are bad, these words are expensive, these words are too great. So I think it's a matter of trial and error.
Okay, cool.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah, the average monthly searches, they do vary a lot. They used to be far more specific, but I think it was too specific and people were kind of upset with that. So they made them a lot more broad. You can still tell a general approximation of how many people search something. So if you want to get to Keyword Planner from Google Ads, you can just go to the tools and settings, and on the left-hand side, under planning, there is Keyword Planner. So I highly recommend just playing around with that, seeing what the average costs and search volumes are.
Sorry, while we're on that, so that would be good also when you're creating content for your website, right? Just to see what people are searching for, right? So Kaushik, you've mentioned that in the past that we need to start finding user intent and crafting the content around user intent.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So once you've found some keywords to target, you can put them in here, and these are the keywords that users will be searching for to come across your ad results. Okay, and that brings us to the final step, which is actually designing your ad. The visual aspect, what it's going to look like when people search it. So with Google search ads, as I'm sure everybody already knows, there's not like images or anything. It's all just text. However, you can add images if you're running other types of Google ads. So down here, you can set the URL that people are sent to, and you can also set a display path, which is what people see. So this little link over here, the example.com, that's what they will actually see. And the final URL is the URL that they will be sent to.
You can clean it up. So if you have a very specific landing page or whatever you're sending them to, but you can put in the display a bit, sort of like hyperlinking in Word, right?
Yes. And that's one of the reasons why you have to be kind of careful with the Google ads, because you never know where an ad's going to take you. I think that's one of the reasons they have quite a, I guess, spammy reputation. They can be great, but also anybody can access them and change these things. So there's a lot of people who don't like, who are really against these ads.
Could you use this for nefarious means, like set up an ad and pretend to be another law firm, put their domain in there? So you can put any domain, right? You don't need to verify it. Or does that text that you put in your website sort of verify that you can use that?
It has to go towards your website, but there is definitely people who use it for nefarious things. And I think recently they had, ads that you click on and they have like a Bitcoin miner or something. There's all kinds of shady stuff with ads, but obviously they're also a great way to advertise your company. And yeah, I think it really just depends on like who's making the ads, and that's why they have a bad reputation more recently.
Yeah. Okay.
So Google Ads is actually quite unique, where you don't set one headline and one description for an ad. Rather, you can set up to 15 headlines, and these headlines will be not randomly generated. So you set the headlines, but then they will be like randomly mixed and shown to people. So for example, this is extremely useful when you are testing the efficacy of an ad. If you make an ad and you want to see which headline is the most popular, what do people click on the most?
So basically this is like A/B testing of headlines, but the algorithm does it automatically.
Yeah, so it's split testing to see which headline works best. It will show different headlines to different people, and then it can see and give you the results to see which one is the most popular headline. And from there, in the future, maybe you can create an ad with just that headline that works really well. The same thing goes for descriptions. You can set multiple descriptions, and it can kind of mix and match the descriptions and headlines together to see which combos work the best.
Yep. Kaushik, any advice on how to craft these? Because I think most law firms will want to say like, oh, we're a tier 1 law firm and all of this. So what should we be keeping in mind when we're crafting these descriptions from sort of the marketing psychology aspect of it?
I think you have to keep it straight. You cannot. So I think everyone says I'm the number one at something. I'm the best. We're the best at something. So I think you have to come up with, be a tad bit more different and more personalized. Like either talk about a very specific problem to what they're searching for. I think that sets yourself apart compared to like millions of other people screaming at them. So I think in terms of creatives, which is like changing the headline and like changing the description, that's a good way to go.
Yeah, definitely. I think also, yeah, like you said, I think honesty is a big one with headlines. And I think also these days, there's been a lot of action, at least on Google's behalf, against kind of, let's say, clickbaity things. Titles that use like too many, I guess, expressive words, and they're actually trying to kind of crack down on that. So it's definitely worth, I guess, being more, not necessarily serious in a title, but don't over exaggerate things and be honest. I think that's very important.
And it's kind of like saying if you're the best at something, you're probably not the best at it. So
Yeah.
They'll say stuff like that.
Okay, so just identify the issue, be attention getting, and then just be very clear what they what they're getting. Okay.
So that brings me to the final option, which is URL options. Basically, if you have Google Analytics or some analytics software on your website, you can see who's viewing your website, what URLs they're going to, what they're doing. And you can add a tracking code here. So basically that just means if you are using analytics, you can see exactly which people came from ads, and then you can kind of see what they do on your website after coming from said ad. So this here just lets you set like a custom URL so that you can track all of these people. Like I'm sure anybody who's familiar with analytics or who uses it regularly for their site, you probably see those people who are on weird URLs like something.com/FB for Facebook, click ID, and it has some random code on it. It's basically just the same as that. It's tracking a specific user and where they came from.
Okay.
So yeah, that is all of the creatives for making an ad. Once you've made one, you can also create different versions. You could use different headlines. You can create many ads under one campaign. And this is a great way to, if you're just starting out with ads, it's a great way to split test and see exactly what titles, perhaps what images work best and what gets the best ROI, the best results. So I don't know if there's a limit to ads, but you can definitely run like at least 5. So
that's pretty much it, right? It's not too complicated, right? It's just going through and filling out everything and playing around and hitting save.
This is probably an impossible question to answer, but how do you guys balance when you first started doing this, investing your time and money, because you're probably going to make some errors, versus outsourcing? I mean, how long does it take to actually get good at this? Not just running the correct Google ads, but your skill in identifying what's working, what's not, and then balancing again just the outsourcing. Because right now, personally, just I'm swamped. I don't think I have a whole lot of time, and just I'm curious to hear maybe background stories of how you guys made that balance.
Cool. Do you have an answer, Kaushik? Or do
you could go first.
Okay. Well, I think at least for me, like initially, I think it's the life dilemma of money versus time, right? And so I had more time than money, and I was willing to kind of put in that effort initially. And so for me, I probably spent about 3 or 4 months running like split tests for different companies, different brands before I actually felt confident creating a campaign in a short period of time. So these days I'm very confident setting up a campaign in 30 minutes. And I think actually setting up the campaign is not the time consuming part, it's the monitoring results and adjusting. And I think in that case, yeah, outsourcing can definitely be better and be much easier for you, less stressful, because there are people out there who have already, they've spent years doing this and they know what they're doing. I think for me, the one big issue with outsourcing is that a lot of people who run Google Ads, they claim to be experts on Google Ads, and they probably are, but their past experiences are in a different field. They might have been advertising or travel agencies, I don't know. And the ads are very different, and looking at the results is very different because you have different goals for a law firm and a travel agency. So I think outsourcing is probably ideal actually, because it is very time consuming. But if you do go that route, then you need to make sure that the person is actually has experience in the field, and also that you can kind of keep an eye on them. I feel I think outsourcing ads, I've heard many horror stories, I guess, of people who are way overspending and not getting results. So yeah, I think the actual ad process of creating ads is not too time consuming once you run a few, but keeping up to date with them and split testing, updating ads is incredibly time consuming. So
one more thing I want to add about so I think getting an agency is good, but as Ethan said, they need to have like a track record for, let's say, the legal industry or even like the particular practice area. And one problem is like when I was part of the BD team at my previous law firm, so I was in charge of tracking everything like Google Analytics, Search Consoles. So I think internally you have a better idea of how your audience turn into potential clients. So you know the path, like what they're searching for. You can put yourself in their shoes, which an ad in like a general Google ad agency may not be able to, because they just go off of data they find on Keyword Planner, which only paints like half the picture. So they can just, let's say personal injury again. So they can go personal injury, particular location. But like if you worked in a law firm, it's more than that. It's like you can use a particular long tail keyword to see, okay, this is what they also search for, and you can get it at a cheaper rate. But like I said, you need to have the time and money to test it out.
I think, yeah, it's a bit of a roundabout answer. That is a very difficult question to answer, but just one more thing I wanted to add to that as well is if you do outsource, often you will end up changing agencies or changing people along the way, right? You might not be getting the results you want with one agency, so you move to another. And with Google Ads and other ad networks, that can be a very big issue, because one person will be running your ads and they might become familiar with it, and then suddenly another person's coming in. And if you do the things yourself, you run the ads yourself, then you always have that knowledge with you, right? But if you have an agency doing it and they run ads for a while, maybe they're not getting the results you want, so you move to another agency, then that new agency is probably going to spend a few months just trying to set up retesting ads to see results again. So there can be a big downtime if you have to like change who you're outsourcing to.
Those are great answers to the question. Thank you guys so much.
And then you're going to show us what the results look like after you set up a few ads, right?
Yeah. So because I can't show any of the results that I have, I was trying to find some screenshots. This is a little bit of an older interface, but it's the stats shown are still basically identical to what you will see today. And basically, you can see you have the basic information like how many clicks, which is just how many people clicked on your ad, how many impressions, so how many people saw the ad. Impressions isn't a great metric because somebody may be scrolling past on their phone and they only see it for 0.1 of a second, but it still counts as an impression. CTR, which is click-through rate. So out of the impressions, in this case, like 460,000, how many people actually click on your ad? CPC, cost per click, how much you're actually paying for each click through to your website. And then total cost, which is the cost for this specific ad campaign, the overall cost so far. And average position, which is basically just, are you the first result or second result? This is normally based on bidding. If somebody is bidding higher than you and you're the second highest bidder, then your position will be second. If there's two people above you, then it could be third. So you can see that this one has an average position of 1.8, meaning that it's usually in the second position, but sometimes it's in the first position. And then the conversions and the cost for a conversion. So yeah, basically.
So that first ad there, so they would probably do better to narrow down the targeting rate, right? Because they're sending this to a shit ton of people, but
yeah, basically,
0.07.
This is a shitty ad. Pardon my language. It's a very bad ad, and they just burn like $200 just showing it to a bunch of people who are just scrolling through it.
Yeah,
and people, so those clicks might just be accidental clicks, right? Sometimes they just click on something and.
I mean, it's like putting an ad for, you know, a baseball team in New Zealand, a country where baseball basically doesn't exist. You know, there's tons of people seeing the ad, but why? What's the point? So this is why it's vital to have a clear goal from the start. You know, what do you want to achieve?
And what's that percent served mean? Like, I'm not clear on what that's supposed to mean.
Percent served is it's hard to explain. So with ads, they
all right, I think the easier way to put it is with the constraints you gave. So let's say you put in all the interests, like the search terms. So like the Google will give you, okay, there's around people, there's between 500,000 and 1 million people who can view the ad. So that's like the serve percent. So basically it showed it to 82% of those constraints.
Of those parameters that you've set.
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
So people who were interested in baseball, whatever,
so
of those people.
From the looks of it, this looks like a B2C ad, like a commercial product. So because where their goal is to just let people know that, hey, look, I have this shiny object. If you want to buy it, you can click on my ad. It's like that.
Right. Yeah, that's a better explanation.
Cool. So, that's clear then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's everything I wanted to cover, I think.
All right. Well, good timing. We're coming up on the end of the hour here. So that's been a really, really helpful look at the process. I think it's not as daunting as people think it is before they start. Tag Manager is a little bit of a different issue, which we're going to be talking about in our next session with you too. And can you briefly explain what Tag Manager is and why people would want to watch that session?
Sure. So I'm hoping most people are somewhat familiar with Google Analytics, which is basically just a tool that's used to see the data from your website. You know, how many people visit your website, how long they stay on your website for, what pages they visit, information like that. But analytics is also, you can't track some things, like it can't track who contacts you via a contact form or who clicks on a phone number and calls you from that. And Google Tag Manager essentially allows you, it gives you a way to monitor these things. And not just with Google services, you can also integrate many other platforms. So basically, it's a way to monitor things on your website. And for a law firm, I think it's particularly valuable because you can monitor metrics that matter to you, like how many people call you, how many people email you, rather than traffic.
Also, sorry, and like when I worked at the law firm, I was always curious like how long someone spent on the website and what actions they took. So if they just came to the homepage, did they immediately leave, or did they click about like an attorney's, did they go look at an attorney's profile? Do they look at like the blog section? So you can track individual actions that the users take. So I think it gives a lot more refined data so that you can,
Yeah.
so you can use that data to, alter your content marketing strategy as well.
So for, the BD managers reporting during a partners meeting every month, those sort of vanity metrics like, oh, this many people opened up our newsletter. Well, who cares, right?
Right.
What happened after that? So you'll be able to use Tag Manager to track, okay, they clicked on this link to that article and they booked or they filled in a contact us form, and then we made that
And you can
call or
also,
something.
let's say you put out a piece of article, so it has a lot. So let's say you track the amount of clicks it's getting. So you're like, whoa, it's getting a lot of views, but people leave 3 seconds after bumping into the article. That means that you had a really good headline. So yeah, great job, but the quality of the article was pretty bad. So you need to, change up the content. So it gives you like very small data so that you can, tailor other strategies.
All right, awesome. So I think there's a lot to learn about this, and we'll keep talking about this and producing some content on this. Um, but you guys have a podcast coming out soon, right? So before we end, briefly tell us what's your podcast about? What are you talking about, and why should we be listening?
Okay, so the podcast name is The Legal Two Cents, where Ethan and I give our 2 cents on how to market and grow your firm. The reason we started it is because Ethan loves podcasts. I don't know, he keeps telling me to listen to podcasts, and I know I'm slowly starting to get into it. But a lot of the podcasts for the legal marketing industry, it's very formal, and I don't like that. So from the language I use, I swear a bit as well. So I need something more casual, and I couldn't find anything. And I'm sure like I reached out to a lot of people in the industry and they felt the same way. So we were like, all right, it's just two dudes who love marketing, and we're gonna talk about how we can help firms. So I think it's we're gonna cover like a bunch of topics ranging from content marketing, SEO, paid advertisements, and you'll watch me tease Ethan, roast Ethan, and it's gonna be like just two friends having a chat, and we hope that you'll become a good friend with us as well, and join in the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be sure to link that in the description. So for those watching on YouTube, please do check that out. It'll be published by then. But until then, thank you so much for getting on the call today. Appreciate everyone's time.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.